Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today is Monday, September 23rd, 2024, and if today is not this date, you are watching a replay. We are broadcasting live in the United Public Radio Network, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 in New Orleans. We are also broadcasting live on social media, and this show is brought to you by the Experiencer Support Association. I'm your host, Ryan Stacey. I'm a licensed private investigator. As a director of investigations for the Experiencer Support Association, I use my investigative skills to dive headfirst into the hidden mysteries of UFOs, paranormal activity, and consciousness phenomena. All right, thank you for tuning in. Got to say that every time because I get new listeners on the regular. Hope everybody's doing well. I did see a like from Jimmy Edwin Reddick. Thanks for tuning in. Chris, I see you. Thank you, sir. And a shout out to, there's a few of you who haven't popped up yet, so don't be a creep, say hello. Jimmy starts off by saying, you're always so informative with UFO stuff. Keep up the great work. You're so in tune to keep knocking on the right doors. I appreciate that. I haven't done any UFO work in a while. I need to get back at it, and I'm working towards that. And that brings me to the first segment, which is the Tessa Update.
Tessa News and Updates.
All right. So for the most part, everything is working. Good job, Chris. You got everything where it's got to be. Awesome. Good job. So tomorrow, Tuesday, September 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we will have Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, Season 6, Episode 37. Danny Whitson will be interviewing Dean Greaves, which is a spiritual teacher, or who is a spiritual teacher and an author. So make sure you tune in to that tomorrow. The next thing that we want to talk about is EA. EA is this Wednesday. So if you haven't signed up for EA yet, or don't know what EA is, head to the website, experiencersupport.org. Under the Experiencer tab, you'll see something that says Experiencers Anonymous. You'll be able to find that. Click on that. It'll give you some information about the event and whatnot here. But I just want to take a peek and see how many tickets are left here. All right. Well, tickets are still available. So they are free. I still got some tickets here. So they're still available. For those of you who want this session, it is this Wednesday. Please come out to it. Enjoy it. Participate in the conversation. We do have volunteers assisting with this program to help us understand, the help us understand and to assist with the mental illness that comes with these experiences. Unfortunately, they do exist. I'd be lying to you if I said they didn't contribute to the issues that we have within disclosure. However, this is a method that we can use to rule out whether or not existing or conditions have anything to do with your experience. And that's what we want, because it'll reinforce and support that, because we know the naysayers are going to just use that as an excuse. All my haters know all my problems, and they often bring that up all the time. But I know that once I have evidence, it ain't your judgments, your opinions mean diddly squat. Can I say that? Yeah, I'm on radio. This is hard. That, and the other thing that we got going on is we're still working on bringing in a new thing to Tessa. We have some announcements that I have to do, which I'm behind on because I've been busy with rebrand and a restructure of my investigation company. So we've been kind of busy with that. Masonry's been busy. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but I owe announcements to some people. And Jillian, hello, I'm talking about you right now. I do have to make some announcements about the CE5 program that we're going to be bringing to Tessa at some point once we figure out the details. But where we're stuck right now is, to be honest, is trying to find a name for it. Okay, we've used CE5, Stephen Greer. There's HIC, Human Initiated Contact, which has been used before. We're trying to figure out the proper way to name this phenomenon to fit within the ultra spectrum, but still be neutral to the point that no matter what everybody calls it. So something we are working on. We got a couple funny ideas that we were talking about in the chat. But maybe we'll make a post or something like that. I think I was supposed to do a poll. I think so. Forgot about that. I got to get to my notes this week. I will. I promise. But other than that, that's it for updates. So today's episode is 2019-0043 beings observed. So let me play that jingle there.
Beings observed, intent unknown.
All right, so I am going to find number 43 for us. Apologize for not being prepared this one. As you all know, picking up a kid after school, feeding them, doing all those things, and then hopping in this podcast. I'm just a little bit behind today. All right. Okay. So I think 27. No, we're looking for 43. Where's 43? 43. We've done all these. Wow. I think we cleared Ontario, did we not? Nope, not that one. $72. 43. There it is. Found it. Okay. All right. So this is the one we're going to do. Let me get to the comments here. What did you say? Hello, Jimmy. You seem to know how to break down the secrecy wall. It's not about breaking down the wall. It's about being persistent. It's about being accurate. It's about saying the right thing to the right people, because when it gets escalated to those who make the decisions, they know what's coming next if they do not provide what I'm asking for. I do that quite a lot, especially in law. You need to remind people of their laws when they're breaking them laws, and give them an opportunity to correct it, let them fix it, and also let them know that you're willing to appeal or escalate it. And you just continue to hammer that as politely and as professional as you can until you get the results that you're looking for. Or I shouldn't say that, until you get them to do what they are contracted to do. Say it that way. All right. Yeah, Jillian says we aren't going with my last two ideas. No, we might. That might be the only things that we do with your last two ideas, because that seems to be the only thing that works these days. But we'll come up with something. We'll come up with something. I just got to find time to sit down and hammer it. I'm hoping to find some time this week. We got lodge again tonight. We got to practice tonight, and then we have our lodge meeting tomorrow night, and then hopefully I got time to sit down, but I can't just. To be creative, you need to be undisturbed, as I'm sure you know. Okay, so on that note, we are looking for volunteers and or people who want to do trade work or services for services. If you want to help with anything behind the scenes, just reach out to Tessa and let us know. All right, so this is continuing from our episode last week, where we were talking about a really complex case. Okay. And this one is also complex, but happened in a different place and time in the world. But the experiencer is the same, and we'll see that with the experiencer ID number when we get into it. Okay, so I'm going to play the video here for you guys. On April 30th, 2019, in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, an experiencer reported mysterious markings and bruises from a recent encounter with quote an extraterrestrial being. So I'm just gonna. The next slide says this experiencer has been visited, quote, by many types of beings since 1969. So all these beings here. Jillian, I see your comment. I'll get to it in a second. Thank you. So these beings here, multiple beings. Okay, this comes back to what I was talking last episode about how important it is to have separate reports, but this complex report is the very reason I knew that we needed the ultra spectrum classification system, because I could not classify this experiencer's experiences using the Hynek-Vallée classification system. That's how that came out to be. All right. So these two cases that we've been talking about, that's just a little history there as to where all this stuff kind of started with that, the reasoning for that. Because I wanted to classify it complex, right? All right. So we want to know if anybody's seen these strange looking creatures or beings, right? Okay, so I'll read and continue here. Jillian did say, so take your time, take the time you need. I'm getting stuff done in the meantime. Better to take time and effort than using something half good. Yeah, I do apologize. I do want it to be good, but I have to give you time, and I haven't been able to give you the time that I promised because I've just been busy with everything else. So I owe it to you to set this up, and I will set it up, I promise. Okay, so the report says my husband is in the military. All right, so that's important. Okay, once in a while we would go for 6 months overseas. Okay, so it's a traveling military family. One time he went away. Experiencer was alone. In the morning, I wake up with bruises on my legs more than usual. They be on the same spot on each leg. So saying this at the beginning is suggesting that this relationship with the military husband may have something to do with this experience. We can't prove that, but that is what's being suggested here in this statement. Okay, that's why that's provided. That's the reason for it to be there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in there. My husband was worried and concerned about how I was getting these, as he should be. When he left, things turned for the worse, which is unfortunate. I remember I would wake up and sense that the ETs are coming. So not a comfortable feeling. The room turns dark and feels cooler, and the wall pitch black where the grays came through. They go around my bed. I can still move at this time. One pulls off my sheets. I'm looking into his large black eyes. They step aside, and then I'm paralyzed and can't move. I feel myself floating up and going through the black wall when they came in. So this not comfortable feeling is normal for what's going on, for what's being observed. The concern I always have is I was waking up. So we don't know if you're still asleep or in a dream state or in the real state, reality. It's really hard to pinpoint when and where this has happened. But we're starting to see a pattern here. A lot of this stuff does happen when we're, reaching REM sleep, perhaps. I gotta pay attention closer to the time frame of where this is happening. But so there's a pattern there. But does that mean they're dreaming? Remember that. We still have psychogenic activity. We still have the ability to remote view. Why can't you remote put messages in people's minds? The technology exists. It's very possible, and we have to take that in consideration. That might be what's going on here. Okay, so the grays. So she's identified the beings based on what she knows. The paralyzed part is interesting. So are they sleeping? Can they not move? Are they dreaming? Or did some sort of I would say energy, some sort of psychogenic activity to create this paralysis? We don't know that. Okay, but this is common. I feel myself floating up and going through the black wall they came in. So is it a dream? If it's not a dream, how is this possible? Well, it's possible if it happened in your mind. But if it happened in your mind, that doesn't mean it's not real. It's still very real. I have to understand when it's in your mind, if you're in a sleep state, if it's a past life, if it's a genetic memory, all right, or if it's future thought. Who knows where our minds actually go when we go to sleep, right? And things like that. This experiencer learned. So here's additional information. This experiencer learned through regression that more beings were present over the series of events. We have included those beings in this past post and video. Cases will be separated at a later time. This is one of the many complex cases that inspired the creation of the ultra-spectrum classification system. So it's written right there. Right on. Okay, so now let's look at the original evidence. So we do have beings observed, but part of this is also visitation. Okay, we look at the ultra-spectrum classification system. So it would also count as visitation. A mental presence, physical presence, or a hybrid. Likely hybrid in this case because we can't. It's believed to be physical, but it's likely mental. But there's also physical effects, right, with these bruises. Invited, uninvited. So it would be uninvited, essentially, if we were to do that with the visitation. But this is set up for the best category, which was beings observed. Okay, this is what we were focusing on this particular one. So here are the bruise marks on the upper legs, on the side. Bruising is not as bad as the time in Winnipeg. The same time I got the burns. I even had a small black bruises on my breast, stomach, and arms and legs. Still do today, but not as dark. So this is, again, a little bit of background when we asked them to explain the story here. Bruising can be created many ways, as we know, in your sleep, but these bruises very well could be real too. How does a bruise happen if it's happening in your mind? That is $1 million question. How can both exist? We don't know how that's possible. We also can't rule it out because we're not a witness to the way that this individual has slept. But hopefully these things don't continue. Then here's a drawing of what she claims is an incision mark. I drew a blister there where the cone, I drew a blister. They were cone shaped. So that's indicating of that. Here's a bruise on my right knee. I had these on both of my knees at the same time, and as well the other bruises and burns. I looked terrible with all of these and felt really sick. This happened to me 5 times. The burns on my knees last 2 times had blisters on them, and the last time the blisters were bleeding and had an incision mark in the middle of the bruises. They were painful. So there's a large puncture mark. I had these on my upper leg on both of the same spot on both legs. They have large puncture marks. Here's the small rounded bruises I get on my arms, legs, stomach, and breasts. So medical would have been ruled out at the time of this case because we need to ask those questions. It is odd that these things are happening quite severely. But what's difficult with this particular case is that the timeline of all these different events are grouped up into one report. So as complex as this is, I don't have the individual data for each of these things. So when something happens, you want to report it while it's fresh in your mind or while it's happening if you can. So that way the information can be collected ASAP and your memory can be as sharp as it needs to be. Okay. What was I going to say here? So this part here can also be considered residual evidence. Okay, we have an external effect and the human was affected. Okay, we've got markings or implants or depending on what you want to categorize this as. So this hybrid event, even though we're focusing on beings observed, also fits with visitation, also fits residual evidence, and it should be classified as hybrid because it's a mixture of all of these things, but it's blended. It was so complex that I could not use it. I had to put it in there as an example. Okay, Michelle Desrochers, thanks for tuning in. I see your love. Thank you. Okay, so moving on back to this. The burn marks, my lower arms outside above the elbow. I had these the same time as the burns on my knees. These ones were medium brown color and painful. No incision marks in these. This happened in Winnipeg as well. Okay. So the assumption is that all of this stuff has happened in one night, which is quite severe. However, it is likely that these have happened at different times over a long period of time. That is not available, but there's evidence that this experiencer is experiencing, residual evidence while they're sleeping, and we need to look into that. These do not look normal. They're not bed bugs. At least they don't look like I'm saying bed bugs, but like bug bites in the bed. But then we start to get into these things. Okay, so here's the beings observed. Okay, she called them grays. I will call them a being observed because yes, they appear to be gray, but are they gray aliens? I don't know. They could be a gray suited human. They could be an android. It could be a machine, but still a being. Okay. So this is the aliens. This is what she calls them, assuming they come from outer space. I see they're 3.5 feet, have a large head, big, long black eyes, no hair, no ears, holes for the nose, small mouth. They have 4 fingers and light gray in color. So they fit the description of the typical gray alien. Okay. Those who know the history of this image of the gray alien should know that it's part of a marketing thing that was set up by Roswell. Okay. This image was created as marketing. However, since then, a lot of these images have come forward because this is the belief that what these extraterrestrials look like that crashed in the Roswell, New Mexico crash, if that actually happened, allegedly, because we can't prove that has happened yet without reasonable doubt. So here they are again. There's that black wall. My room gets darker and the entire wall turns pitch black. In seconds, they walk in through. There is no wall. The room temperature feels cooler at this time. So how is this possible? How can they walk through this wall? Right? It can be explained in the conscious, in the psychogenics, but can it be explained in the physical? Right? In order to do that, some sort of technology would have to exist. It'd have to phase. It would have to move through these walls. So are they actually doing this in the 3-dimensional world, or is this a simulation? Is this a vision that is being seen by the host, the experiencer? And even if it is, that does not mean that this event didn't happen. You just have to question where and when it's coming from so you can put that data together and know where to look. And just because it's in their head doesn't mean that we can't do anything about it. If you guys are looking for that empirical proof and all that other stuff, you got to talk to the experiencers. The experiencers are disclosure. You're not going to get this physical stuff until they want to reveal it, I believe. But who knows? All right. So then moving on. The ETs come from the closet. The closet and wall are pitch black. Closets, for some reason, are common, like little portals. I don't know the history behind that or why that's always the way that it be, but somebody said it once, and now everybody seems to be happening everywhere, right? There will be history behind that. A couple of them walk around to the right side of the bed, and a couple of them at the end of the bed, and a couple are at the side I'm on. I'm a few feet from the closet where they enter. So if they're sleeping and in a dream state, this is very vivid information. This is very detailed information. They might be comfortable. They might be relaxed. It might be a combination of all these things. But how do we prove it? Because she's sleeping. She doesn't have a bed. She doesn't have, a camera in her bed. She doesn't have a video camera, and things like that. So we have to rely on these drawings. We have to rely on these recreations, if you will. Jillian says, I've experienced very similar with 3 beings seemingly coming in through the wall. See, now we have some validation in the sense that this experiencer is not alone. But are the circumstances of her cases exactly the same as this one? Well, that depends on the reports that come in and the details that Jillian remembers. So, we need cases to come in, but I also need people to help me with the data and the research and getting the documents and all that stuff up, because there's a lot of information that kind of needs to get out to explain this. But we're as you know, we're self-funded and working with what we got, and very grateful for the team that is putting in their time as it is. But if you guys want progress, you gotta either help out or support on Patreon, Heed the World, and let us know. Jillian also continues to say, I feel like it was done through a holographic projection. So that's her perspective. And I tend to agree on something like that, because that would make sense on how this could happen in the 3-dimensional world. If it was a holographic projection, there could be government involvement. Okay, the human element is involved, and that makes it easier for me to track. If it's extraterrestrial and superpowers and all those other things, I ain't cut out for that. I can't go there. I can't do that. I don't have the ability to do that at this time, and I sure as heck don't have the time to practice and teach myself how to do all this stuff. But it happens to me sometimes too. But I got to bring it into the physical. All right. I do think some of these cases could be holographic. And if it is, then I would question the source, and I would likely think government human involvement of somehow. Maybe not the government per se, but it definitely has to be someone involved with the technology to deliberately place that at the time. Now, the question I would have is why you? Why this message? Why these people? Why this message? Is it individual or is it a global propaganda? Is it a scare tactic? Like, what is the reason for this? And that's the bigger question. Okay, then we continue on. Then she sees this one as I'm getting out of bed. He comes out of the washroom. Looks like he's looking at me as he walks across the room. Now, if she was sleepwalking, if she was asleep, perhaps this is somebody that's in her house. But she claims to have been alone. So if we give credibility to her telling the truth, that is not what's happening in this instance. Okay, got to look at it from all sides. Then he walks and then he disappears. I'm noticing that brim hat there. I get a little startled seeing this, but don't feel any negativity. This one is pitch black too and wearing a hat. All right. Then I see a shadow in my mirror, and I have one sticking there, head out from the side of the door in my bedroom, washroom. They're pitch black mostly, but sometimes appear to be dark gray during the day. So now we're starting to get into reoccurring sightings by this experiencer through her everyday stuff. That asks the question, maybe they are psychogenic. Maybe they do have the ability to see the ultra spectrum, to see under the veil, to see this other space. Just doesn't realize that's what they see. And then when we have visitation, is it visitation? Yeah, visitation is when the intent is implied. So when you know what these beings or whatever is visiting you is up to, then there are beings observed, which can be where the intent is unknown. So at this point, we do not understand the intent of these beings. That's why they're being observed. That's why it's not a visitation. Even though you can claim they're visiting you, but until they say, hey, I'm visiting you, we can't assume that on the other side. So if this experiencer is able to see a lot of beings, so observing a lot of beings, then it's possible that this is evidence to suggest that this is always there. Who can voice? I'm not a medium. I'm not a psychic. I don't have all these abilities to do so, but I've talked to a lot of people who have these abilities. I would put that in the category of someone who perhaps has medium type abilities that may not be nurturing them or practicing with them to do this. So if there's any psychics or mediums out there in the audience or watch this on the replay, is this similar to what you would experience when you know you're channeling, when your intention is there? Okay, Julian says, she could be going into a semi-astral projection. Okay, but not fully separated, therefore more susceptible to seeing them while seeming to still be in her body. Yeah, see, semi-astral projection. I never thought about that because, yeah, it is a bit of astral projection. But astral projection is more intense, right? You want to project, but I guess it is also possible for those with the psychogenic ability or sensitivity to astral project unwillingly, right? And that very well could be an explanation for it, but that still brings us to the same space. It still brings us to the ultra spectrum. That still doesn't give us any physical evidence So if this experiencer is listening, we could suggest trying these methods and see when you intentionally do these methods if the same thing happens. But be wary of your imagination. Do not create these thoughts. Okay, that's a little bit tricky, and we got to get the controlled environment for that if you're doing this on your own. The CE5 program that we're talking about will kind of touch on some of those things, actually. Jillian continues to say, I had many spontaneous astral projection experiences. It took me a while to figure out. All right, well, then you could be, that's going to remember that, because when I start getting into some of these cases, I might need to bounce some of these ideas off you, get an idea of what house these are sitting in. Okay, so next on the list is this guy, this little being. I shouldn't say guy, I don't know. This one here, I don't feel comfortable with. It felt evil to me, reaching his hand to me, and didn't see the face, and has smoky appearance around it and pitch black. So you can make assumptions based on their hands. What's interesting with me is this cloak, because this cloak seems to be common. And not everybody can see the face because maybe the hands are closer, or that's what they saw and that's the memory that they held on to. There's a lot of things that kind of get in the way. You know, you got 5 fingers, 5 toes. Could be it's standing on its 2 feet. It's bipedal. It's a human. It very well could be humanoid. So I would classify that being likely a humanoid bipedal, but it also could be a paracryptid bipedal or bipedal, however you want to say it, because of the characteristics that we have here. But these could be also very long fingernails. Be very long toenails. I know some of you guys might be assuming that this is reptilian because of the characteristics, but is there any evidence in here that can confirm that, right? That's separating fact from belief, okay? The fact is a being was observed, and this is what their hands look like, okay? I've seen some pretty nasty looking feet and toes and hands and fingers from human beings, all right? So we can't rule us out. I'm judging, but I'm just using that as an example. Okay. Then we go and carry on. Now we're starting to see a face. All right. This face kind of gives us a little bit more detail. Not humanoid, perhaps. Now it fits in the paracryptid category. Okay. That gets us close. Bipedal or bipedal. These archetypes, you can name it whatever you want. But this is as far as that bucket goes, bipedal. And if we go back and do the same thing for the Hat Man, that could be humanoid as well, bipedal. It's a shadow, so it could, also be an apparition, depending on the details that come. And then, of course, these little gray beings could also very well be humanoid, paracryptid, if you would be an extraterrestrial, but it really depends on how you want to do it. So when you guys are using this system, you want to pick the best possible one. And if you don't have the all the data, then you've got to ask the questions. Okay. All right. So moving on. So continuing. So this is one of them. I see their hooded cloaks are pitch black. I can see their face with the light coming in the window. I can see their face. They have a reptilian appearance. So here we go. We know that the experiencer is classifying them themselves as a reptilian. Okay. That gives us an idea of where to look, but not necessarily exactly what those are. They have a long claws. They're tall and wide, huge. Their appearance can be frightening sometimes. Well, that does appear to be frightening, so that emotion is valid and justified. Okay. Now their cloak. Okay. Now, this is another being. Okay. This is one of them I see. Does that mean that because the hands match or similar, that this is the same being? It could be. On a balance of probabilities, there's probably a 99.9% chance that this is the same being. However, the face wasn't seen and we can't confirm that. Okay. So do not, what do I say? Correlation does not equal causation. Okay. Here we are with another cloak, but look, the hands are different. So this cloak, for some reason, is very common, but the beings change. So what is up with this cloak? That is a clue. That is a constant. That is something I can compare and contrast and state with a lot of my research that this is a common appearance for these things. So is this cloak magical? Is this cloak technology? Things like that. But this cloak seems to be used, and not to be, and I'm referring to the fabric, not the technology of cloaking, which very well could be the same, because that's what they used to use back in the day to hide in the three-dimensional world, was to put their cloak on. Assassin's Creed does it all the time, right? Which are the Masons and the Templars and all those other things. Spoiler alert. So pitch black. This one has a light blue light around them, so we animated that in the video. I felt no fear. This one's not reptilian in appearance. Has long, four thin fingers. I've seen a little bit of face, eyes that could see. Appeared dark. This one is still. I saw another one similar to this one, had no blue light around it. Shortened, 4.5 tall, pitch black, but I didn't feel comfortable with that one. It felt evil. Right? So you can feel negative energy, but are you feeling it, or are you scared because of the way that it appears? Okay, pay attention to that. Is it fear, or is it evil? Okay, we tend to fear what we don't know, and we mix those emotions together. In therapy, we call that BCA, behavior chain analysis. So we'll go back and look at all the things that have happened in the day and figure all that out, but link it all these other things. Well, we'll talk more about that in EA. But so there we are. So before I'll read the stats, and then we'll go back and look at those pictures again in the color, and then go from there. So the Ultra Spectrum Experiencer Report, 43 of 2019, already in the survey, wants us to investigate and report. ID is 6, female, blood type's A positive, eye color is blue, 39 years of age at the time of the event, only one witness to this event. Okay. Feeling was negative, yes. There were injuries, yes. These markings, okay. Do we know that these beings cause these markings? We don't know that. Those are assumptions. But when this experience had been reported, it was just a common accumulation of all of the experiences at once. And that's another example of why I want these things separately if you can. Okay. So 2006 is when it happened, so quite some time before we got it. So information is lost. Time of day is night, ongoing. So 7 objects in this case, because 7 beings were observed. But these also could be 7 different cases. Okay. Jillian says, that fear feeling could be due to contrast frequency between the being versus person. Yeah, it could be. Like, I'm starting to notice when I'm vibing high a little bit. I used to think it was restlessness. I used to think it was boredom, hypersensitivity. Well, I have hypervigilance. That's due to my Army stuff, but it's kind of in the same boat. But I've been recognizing it as a higher vibration instead of an illness, in some ways. But when I'm trying to figure it out, when I'm trying to study it, when I'm trying to trust it, when I'm trying to experience it with my own stuff, I take into consideration of all my childhood crap and traumas and whatever comes along with these things. It does feel like I'm in 2 places at once. All right. So from a personal experience, I can agree that what you just said sounds like what it could be, but we don't know. Not necessarily that they're negative, just emotions produced due to the mix. Yes, and I agree. I mean, it's real that these beings at the end of your bed, when you're in your home alone, in a place where you're supposed to feel good and safe and secure, it is natural to feel fear. All right. I would lose it if I saw something like this in my house. I'd be walking around punching the air trying to tackle these things, catch them. I would fight. I would freaking fight to the death if I saw any of these things. Right? I would try my hardest, but unfortunately, I have not had any of these experiences. But I don't dismiss that it's possible because I haven't had them. Talk to a lot of people who are experiencing it, and I know it exists. I know the phenomenon is real. I don't have to have cancer to know that cancer is real. In some things, that's just one example. But so one day maybe I'll have this and I'll be able to be like, me too. But how do I prove it? It'll be no different. I'm drawing it on a piece of paper, and then it's not really help. Consciousness split. I get it. Yeah. Okay. So let's call it that. I think that's exactly. Could say exactly, but that's very likely what could be happening there. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that. It's likely possible. Highly likely possible. But I still got to leave that doubt in there because I can't confirm. We previously reported, yes. Third party involved, no. Analogical evidence, rating is 3. Beings observed, paracryptid. Okay, that's where I settled. Subtype was 1. That is, bipedal. And so gray alien, reptilian, men in black, and shadow figure. For the shadow figure, I would put that under apparition. But because you could see, and that was for the man with the men in black with the hat, I guess. But if you can see the feet, you can see that as bipedal, then it's one of those. If for an apparition, you would likely pick transmedium or hybrid if you can tell that it's both. Unknown would be if you're unable to determine because there's no characteristics of it. Okay, if it's a mist or something like that, but you want to consider it a being. But then I might argue that it's aerial activity or paranormal activity. Okay, when you're helping with cases in the future and things like that, or if you want to classify something, let me know how it should be. We can have a conversation about that and tweak this. Right, this stuff works for me. It's yet to be proven whether or not it works for you guys, and that's why I want to share this stuff and eventually have some people to teach and carry this on and continue. Unidentified, don't know what it is. Extreme close experience, so that is extremely close because it's at the edge of her bed, and extremely close is less than 100 feet. Okay. Uninvited level 2, so uninvited, and level 2 is trace evidence, so we've got analogical evidence. So that's how the evidence is classified. Okay, all these categories, all these things. So you can also see not just beings observed here, but if you want to track some of these things, you can. Once we get more cases added to the database, again, once we get help on the investigative side of things, on top of all the million things I got to get going, then we can start to do a comparison, or compare and contrast. Jillian, Mike Patterson. I guess those splits too. So I've emailed Mike. Actually, Tessa has. We've interviewed Mike. I'm very interested in having Mike be a part of Tessa, but we have not been able to reach him in an official capacity. We've made attempts to invite him, but I'm not quite sure if those invitations have been received. So if you're in contact with Mike, because he's the Bigfoot guy in Ontario, right? Nudge him and see where he's at. Yeah, okay. Because I am on radio here, but it's not something I haven't said before. He's involved with MUFON in a certain way, but with the certain people that he's involved with are on my burn list based on the conversation that we had today, how I spread light with fire. They're on my fraud list. They're on my incapable list. But that doesn't mean I don't think Mike is part of that. And I do think that he would be a great asset for Tessa, but he has his own, he's got his own opinions on the crew that he's hanging with, if you catch my drift. All right. And if you're listening to this, Mike, I've been trying to get a hold of you. If this resonates with you, let's talk about it. And for those people that I'm indirectly talking about, you know who you are, you know what you did, and you're really lucky I haven't exposed you. So you better not be still doing that. Anyway, he explained to me he would be good to pull in for analysis. Yeah. I can talk to him. We'll keep in touch. Mike started getting involved in C5 groups too. Awesome. Okay. All right. Maybe that could be a segue one day, but we'll focus on that too. C5s are good. But we're gonna raise the bar. It's not just gonna be UFOs. Maybe we'll try beings as well. We got to figure this out. Okay, so now with this little bit of a compare and contrast, we do start to see some shape with these beings. These beings are have similar characteristics, especially with the darkness. But are these sightings happening at night and you just can't make out the details? Or are they literally dark beings? Right? What's with black? Is it always being seen? What's with these cloaks? Okay. I think we pretty well covered all these cases. We haven't done that one yet. And I know we haven't done that one yet. Have we done this one? No, I don't think so. I think there's a few here we haven't touched on, so that's good. So where are we at for time? I got 10 minutes. Anybody got any questions for me? Christopher A. James, thank you for the, I guess that's a care. You care for me or are you concerned for me? Let me know in the comments. Or you care about the conversation. I'm not quite sure how that button actually is meant to be used. And you know what, too? You know that when you say thank you and you see those hands, I used to think those were prayer hands. And I have recently found out that those are not prayer hands, that those are high fives. Two people high-fiving each other. Think about that the next time you see that emoticon. So that kind of blew my mind a little bit. All right, so 10 minutes. Do we have time for another one? We might. Let's see what I can find. Unless you guys have any questions, concerns, pick my brain while I'm here. Okay. I'm going to turn off the bases and stations because I don't need to see that right now. Manitoba. So the next case we would be looking into, that's 41. Aerial activity. Yeah, this group and this experiencer, that's a group that I want to put together as well. This experiencer, let's see if we got all of her cases that's been reported. Let me see here. Yeah, so we did talk about that one last week. If you guys are interested in, specific things like shadow figures. There we go. So the categories do work this way. Okay, this is a good research tool if you guys want to use that as investigators. You can also search at the top, and the more data we get, the more we input here. And that's where I really need the help is getting it on the back end, because like I can do the work, I can get it all ready, but getting it uploaded also takes time. And like you get what you get. So if anybody wants to help out, please let me know. Okay, so the next case then for next week, so I think we'll help Chris here. Oh yeah, that's a nice one. I think we are moving. Maybe we'll just come down here. All right, so this is another one of those balloons. So the high altitude surveillance balloon was brought down. So this has been marked. That's what that one is. You do have a few in here as well. All those balloons have been tracked and put in there. For the UFO part, I think that we've covered everything in this area. Are we really moving on to another spot? What's interesting about all these UFO balloon things is here's your border here, right? We got a lot of activity here, and there's probably some underground stuff up here in Ottawa and things like that, but that's for another show. Okay, so over here in Manitoba, this is the UFO report regarding a UFO at Falcon Beach. So this is a declassified document. This is a Canadian case. guess I could, I know what I got, 8 minutes. Might be able to read this. So this is the declassified document. This is another thing that we want to do is get these documents up, but we need help doing the back end and all that other stuff too. But we're tagging them all the same way. But the declassified documents are also separated, and you can see them on these declassified points of interest and the document event timelines. I don't know if I've talked about these yet, but maybe I'll use this time to explain that. So from the declassified document parts, this is going to include information from 3 sources. So we measure visually with the in proximity with the map, but the same information is also measured in time and association. Okay, so the declassified documents, when they use this timeline, I've explained this in previous episodes. I think I had an episode that was dedicated to it. You essentially just pick the year that you want to go back to. And as these pieces of evidence get added to the database, they will go to their designated spots. And this is helpful because you want to piece things together. So if we were to look at this case here, 2019, all right, just to use this as an example. 2019, way the hell up here. Beings observed interior camp. So they're up here, but then now we can kind of be like, okay, May 16th, was that one particular? July 2nd. Okay, so July. Where the hell is July? May 2nd might have been when it happened. May 16th. Let me see here. Oh no, that's a different one. So everything is kind of grouped up here. So then we can start to see a pattern, how many days have happened. But then it mixes with, the time of the event was 2006. That's why. Not the date I got it, the date the event happened. Here it is. Okay. Wellington. So this is where the event took place. Or is that the wrong one? Right here. There it is. Okay. So then 2007, that's the next thing. Military police report intense light at Canadian Forces North Base, September 14, 2007. So as I add this data here to the timeline, eventually we plug and play. Because I might get a document today that came from the 60s, that came from 1990. So all that information needs to be looked at this way. But then the points of interest, any person that is mentioned, the document that they are mentioned in, we will have this running tally here, and I'm keeping track of their names, their ranks, their places. And why is this is important? Because not every person who redacts the documents redact the same thing or the same way. They use a different discretion. And sometimes, depending on the secrecy of the document, what they redact in that document isn't as high of a risk as some of the stuff that they redact. And sometimes they let some of these abbreviations or these names slip and some things that are redacted. And eventually I'll be able to solve some of these pieces. If you're listening, please, that's a good way for you to clean up your act, but please don't. Please continue making these human mistakes. So we will track it that way. We will also be keeping track of the places, organizations involved, okay, and what documents they're mentioned in. We will also be tracking places, okay, what places are mentioned in these declassified documents. So if you're looking for anything in specific, it's all there. Objects that were mentioned. All right. All this stuff is being tracked. So every time we put in a document in the back end, projects, this information is automatically generated. So this will build on its own as we get more documents and cases added. But again, I'm working on building the C5 program, and I got to finish my my overdue books. I have 3 books that are overdue. So I'm going to focus on that. And then I'm going to be really getting into teaching how to investigate this stuff. But in the meantime, I do need a pilot group to work with. So I'm putting that out there. And I'm also going to start internal. If anybody internally who's already part of the organization wants to be a part of that, let me know. We'll start there. So that's just a little breakdown of that. So this particular document was from the Canadian government. We've transcribed it, and this is important because when you go to other websites that just put the documents up, that's great. You can search for the document, you can read it yourself, but because it's been transcribed and put into text, I can now search for a phrase like a key phrase in my database, and I'll find keywords. That's why that's done. So to do it right, to do it proper, takes time, takes resources, takes people. Okay, definitely takes money, but it takes people. All right, I can only do so much by myself, but I appreciate those that have helped and that continue to help because they are also making this happen. All right, shout out to everybody that is part of the Experiencer Support Association. So yeah, so you can check out these declassified documents. This is where they came from, who got them, and then we're also tracking this stuff too if you're ever interested in that. So if you want to learn everything about Falcon Lake, click on that. This is what we have as far as documents goes. It's a really neat design system. Anything that mentions Stephen or Stefan, everything's here. A lot of stuff about that guy, right? So then you can start tracking it depending on what your research is. Okay, it's supposed to be a one-stop shop. Who's in it? Are you guys going to join? Okay. Okay, last. Oh, I know Sean McNamara too. Experiencer might benefit from reading Renegade Mystic by Sean McNamara. That's actually, that guy's he's family. In my, I'm not going to tell you who he's related to, but because I don't want to tell the whole world, but that person's distant in my family. So lots of details in their confusion between dream state, astral state, and semi-fully experiences. Experiencer, yeah. So if you are listening, Experiencer, or watch this on the replay, check out the Renegade Mystic by Sean McNamara. All right. That's another thing I want to work on. It's called the Ultra Spectrum Library, where we could make a little shop for books that we refer. Lots of ideas, but so little time. So little time. All right, guys, I am out of time, so I do have to end the show. So I hope you enjoyed that. A little bit of a flustered day for me. I got a meeting tonight and a whole bunch of other things on my mind, but hopefully next week. Chris, I did not decide on which episode next week's going to be. Let me see here. 2019 CO172 area activity. Let me just show it on the screen, Chris. This will be the one next week. If you can see that, we'll start there. Aerial activity. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. We're broadcasting live. Yeah. On United Public Radio Network, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 FM. There it is. On the Gulf Coast, 107.7 FM, New Orleans. We are also broadcasting live on social media. And remember, one lie is enough to question all truth. Thanks for watching. Keep your eyes in the sky. And as always, say it. Heed the world. Peace.
If you want to really, really find out about Ryan, ask him about all his work and UFOs in Ontario.
Ryan is one of Canada's leading new UFO investigators. He conducts and oversees UFO investigations on a constant basis. He's compiled a tremendous amount of data regarding UFOs in Canada.
I have used his research extensively. He's much more than a one-dimensional character. He's an authority on UFOs and investigating them, May.
Wow!
Really goes over how UFO investigations are done and what are some of the mistakes that people make when they submit evidence. For starters, don't edit your videos or photos before you send them.
He would come out with an annual report on not only the number of sightings, but how many were unexplained, unknown, or just, nothing could be said. What caused it?
If you want to hear more follow-up conversation between Ryan and myself, you can go to richardolanmembers.com, where we have a candid conversation on ufology, the paranormal, and more. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other.